a voice coming from India, and a voice that is not incentivized in any way to represent any particular view. It's really a collective sense making of people who've been across the country, but also not really bringing any particular ideology forth or any view, but really speaking from our cultural roots.
But very little about India written by Indians. So I feel it's also important from that angle.
and to also look at it from a lens which is rooted, which is, I mean, what we would call Indic in nature as well.
A key insight for me that this report is trying to touch upon is that underneath all these crises there is a evolutionary, there is a spiritual crisis that is has very very deep layers where all of humanity is perhaps at a certain threshold, and these all other crises that are visible in the external world are manifestations or symptoms.
Inviting both affirming views and opposing views so that we may together create a better picture of reality, so that we may be able to impact it for the better.
Welcome to the Bodhi Sangha podcast, where we come together to listen, learn, and support each other in uncertain times. We're a community exploring how to face today's challenges with wisdom, trust, and care. Join us as we walk this journey of change, rooted in connection and guided by life's deeper wisdom.
I'm Abhishek, and I'll be hosting this podcast. We have Kejal, Rohit, and Shashank. Hello, welcome. So I thought we'll start with a round of introductions, and just to get to know who are the people behind this study better. And the question I thought we could have was, you are the person who, you are the person in this report context who, whatever you want to complete it, and maybe a substantial experience, a significant experience you had in life that has informed your participation in this study. So whoever wants to hop first.
Hi, thank you so much, Abhishek, for welcoming us. My name is Shashank, and I am the person who wrote a chapter called Zamana in the report. Did the hard work of choosing what to say and what not, given the present context of our. One significant experience that really I thought helped was visiting many parts of India, many remote parts of India over the last decade, and realizing that whatever idea of India that I had, or an understanding of what is going on in the country or in the world at this point, I would carry, that would definitely get challenged as soon as I would go to a new region. And so what I have learned through that is to really stay open and to always to have that space that there are various dimensions that may not be visible, and my pursuit or my effort is to really hold space or create a space in my mind and in the minds of the readers to be able to see multiple perspectives of any given situation, any given moment, and to ask what is more that is not visible to me. So if the reader experiences that hey, what was I blind spotting, what is that can become more visible, how can I expand the dimensions of my truth, if that can be the experience of the reader, I think my job will be done.
Thank you, Shashank.
I could jump next. Hi, my name is Kejal. I feel I brought into this report a lens of looking at things from pragmatism, from the real world. What are the realities that we're dealing with every day, while may want to look at what else is causing it, but what really is present in a day-to-day experience. So bringing in the flavor of where we are right now and what we experience every day. And I think while sense making, while writing things, while discussing a lot of what should be put into the report, for me, I kept going back to all the experiences in the last decade I've had of meeting people from different socio-economic backgrounds, meeting very senior, experienced social workers, reformers, people who really thought and worked in depth on ground. And I think just being able to assimilate these experiences, the different ideas of how local traditional wisdom has been experienced in different places. I think bringing them together was an experience for me through this whole study that we put together.
Thank you, Kejal.
I'll go next. Thanks, Abhishek. I'm the one who wrote a big chunk of the chapter Kathas from Kaliyug. My name is Rohit. And my experiences over the last few years, primarily in the food and agriculture space, and then more recently in a broader theme of things, has helped me draft the chapter and also be able to give a more rooted, more grounded response, being able to also tap into the history of how we have landed up where we are today as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Rohit. I'm Abhishek. I am the person who kept a role of an overall view of the report. So, conceptualizing the chapter names and a broader flow of the report, and then filling in the blanks wherever. So I'm the person who kind of knows the report from several different directions. I think that's how I would put myself. The significant experience that shaped is almost 6 years ago. I kind of realized that uh, I'm the son of the soil, I'm the child of this nation, and I don't have my cultural roots deeply. And I'm still, it's a still an ongoing process for all of us. I started out with something that I called for myself as rediscovery of India, and I said, let me extensively read, talk, explore India, and deepen myself into the essence of this land. I think that journey has really shaped this report for me and for us as something coming out of India. So yeah, that would be my submission on this. Great. So let's jump right into this question of why read this study, right? For who all is this study? And now I'm going to ask all of us to be salespeople of our study. And in a world where attention is so scattered, in a world where there are so many competing demands, in a world where there are multiple YouTube videos and social media and infinite scrolls and so on, why should somebody read this report slash study? I think that's another question, right? Is it a report? Is it a study? But we'll come to that. But yeah, why should somebody read this?
I feel that the current modus or like method of operation in for any professional, whether they are in the corporate sector or in education sector or social sector or any other, has become that of really focusing with a high sophistication, high focus, zooming into their particular field and looking at having skills and knowledge and experience which is very very specific to their field. I feel the space for stepping back and seeing the whole picture, how say education connects to environment, or environment connects to water, or water connects to our culture. Uh, all of that space has kind of gotten reduced over the years as we became more sophisticated. So anybody who's looking to step back and try and look at a whole picture, uh, this report or study might be for them.
To add to what Shashank said, I suppose the intent of the study is to really sense make what is happening in the country where we are placed vis-a-vis what is taking place in the world, and to also look at it from a lens which is rooted, which is, I mean, what we would call Indic in nature as well.
Yeah, I would really say for any person who's trying to make sense of what is happening right now, struggling with the kind of crisis that's going on in our own lives around us, I think this report definitely would be one way to make sense of why things are happening the way they are happening, who really is part of it, who all is it impacting. And I think the second thing I would say connected to that is what we are sharing here is obviously not just what we think. It's something that we've heard from so many people, and we've been able to just bring it together and weave it together. So it's also experiences of the diverse ecosystems, people, and places from where we've put together this thing. So if you want to look at what historically happened in some of these things, what's the psychosocial, emotional lens of making sense of where things are right now and why they've become the way they've become, I would say then this study definitely would be one such place to go into. And specifically in the context of India, I feel a lot of content is available on what's happening in different parts of the West, but very little about India written by Indians. So I feel it's also important from that angle.
I will pitch it to different segments differently. I think this is where my business education comes in. So I think to the international audience, I'll definitely pitch it as a voice coming from India, and a voice that is not incentivized in any way to represent any particular view. It's really a collective sense making of people who've been across the country, but also not really bringing any particular ideology forth or any view, but really speaking from our cultural roots. So if you want to hear what a voice from India, what do voices from India sound like on what's going on, I would say it's a very Indian product. And we'll talk a bit also about how the process of the report itself is also a very Indic process. Uh, to young people, I would definitely invite them to read this because this is a journey of young people. We all started and have journeyed in the sector. So it really is also a great almanac, a sort of a atlas that helps you orient yourself to the sector. So that would be great. To people from the NGO space and the not-for-profit sector, this voice comes from the semi-fringes of the sector. We do engage with the sector. We're on the movement side much more. And so just to hear what the voice on the background or on the fringes sounds like, perhaps. And those who love us, like us, and know us, please read it because of us. It's something we've put out, and so please read that as well. So I think in terms of knowledge, I feel like this is consolidated knowledge. This is much richer and dense, sense-made knowledge. So even if it may feel like a little bit of a climb, it would be really worthwhile to read. Curious if anybody else wants to add anything on. Anybody else wants to reaffirm or add on what somebody else said.
Yeah, I mean, it just expanded the invitation so much more based on what all we said. I would just say that in the times of such quick scrolls where we, make our conclusions with seconds of engagements on a reel or on a video, the support is really an invitation to hold a long arc of time in our cognition and really see the causality of where things are arising and how things may be emerging from a deeper plane, and really to see that, okay, if we were to imagine not for 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years, but rather for a few decades, and how those waves of change or waves of emergence might be happening. This might really also give the readers a sense of insignificance, that hey, what might action my action might be, that hey, that it may not be as big, but at the same time, understanding the longer arc, each action and each thing uh, coming from a deeper place makes us understand that we are part of a larger movement of time and space. So that, I would say, might be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the images, Shashank, you were sharing that came to me was of slow food. Like there is fast food, which is like you can consume quickly and it makes you unhealthy, though it's tasty. And then there is slow food, more natural, more organic. It takes a while to get used to that taste, but it's really wholesome and great for the body. So this is not fast knowledge, but slow knowledge, knowledge that took time to brew also. It was not instantly produced. And we'd love it if it takes time to consume also, so that it's not instantly consumed. So it's not we're in a slow knowledge business. I think that's what I would add. That इसको चख के देखिए, slow knowledge check के देखिए. In a world of fast knowledge, test some slow knowledge, taste some slow knowledge. Rohit, Kejal, anything y'all want to add?
I'll just also frame it as a challenge. No? If you want to challenge yourself, challenge your beliefs, uh, we want to challenge our own beliefs and our own thoughts also. So if you're wanting to challenge them, also wanting to dialogue, because these are not final answers that we've arrived at. These are still thinking ruminations that we've kind of reached right now, but we are sure that could be things which we don't know and which are open to kind of work ahead. And second, I think just picking from where Shashank left, also a challenge on your attention span. So if you want to give yourself an attention span challenge, that can I read this in one go in say 1 hour, then up for it.
Yeah, I mean, we've also made it with infographics and we've also made it with summaries. But yeah, I think the real report is going to be the challenge to the uphill climb of the real report. Yes, Rohit.
Yeah, in addition to where we are coming from, where are we situated today, the direction of change which we have witnessed, we've also attempted to capture what should be the way, what could be the path going ahead as well. And obviously, a lot of that will be based on further discussions that will happen in time to come. But yeah, we've tried to pitch an outline, a perspective of, again, from an Indic perspective, what could the response be on the lines of this?
So some of this Kejal already started sharing, which is what are some of the disclaimers we want to tell the readers? What are some of the limitations of the study? What do we want to acknowledge upfront about this? Uh, and I think one of the first things that we begin this answer and then kind of get in, which is we're also at a stage of this place where we are saying, is this a study or a report? And we're leaning towards a study more than a report because, to be honest, it's us studying together and putting something out in the world rather than reporting what is out there, right? And therefore, we're tending towards the word study. And in this podcast, you'll hear report and study interchangeably. Eventually, the proposal is to move it to a study because that's really what this is, a group of people coming together and articulating how they see what's happening rather than what is out there. So curious what disclaimers or which what would you say to potential readers?
I think the first one, always, when anything is about India, is that there are so many Indias that nothing can capture fully what India is and how India is. So, in our attempt, also, this is a part of India with our way of looking at things. There are many Indias which we try to cover, but there are many Indias we may have not covered, not reached, and may not be fully representative of where the reality of now would be.
Like about India, I think whatever you say, the opposite is also likely to be true because of its vastness. And just mindful that we are kind of broadly from a urban, semi-urban, upper middle class with proficiency over English and with a bunch of privileges from where we are talking. So I think those will definitely limit how we see things and what we choose to foreground as well. So yeah.
Yeah, also that none of us are academics, academicians, people who have had experience of being in the business, in the government. So those limitations, perspectives would show up, or the lack of those would show up in the report as well.
Yeah, I just hope also not subtle judgments because sometimes when we are not from those spaces, we see them from an outside and kind of judge them. So I'm also hoping that if there are any such subtle judgments, we'd like to kind of acknowledge those and invite you to see beyond them.
Uh, I would just add that like the content of the report is not disconnected from the context that we're trying to create. And one piece of the content without the context of the whole report may not make the whole sense. So a disclaimer is to try and understand the context and what we are trying to lay out, uh, and from that space, it is an invitation to dialogue, to make sense, to contribute to the continuing inquiry. It is not a full and final conclusive answers of this is what India is and this is what India needs, rather an inquiry and an ongoing process of making an effort that the study is trying to inform.
Absolutely. In fact, I think we would actively welcome engagement, dialogue, even divergent points of views because we really feel that will bring the richness of this. And we have been engaged in these processes, but this report is the first time all of us putting our view out together and saying, hey, this is what we are saying. Come talk to us. Let's figure this out together, right? Let's sense make together. And opposing views are always better for richer sense making as well. So, inviting both affirming views and opposing views so that we may together create a better picture of reality so that we may be able to impact it for the better. Great. Anything else? Should we move to the next question then? So this is a personal question. How are we feeling about taking this report out into the world? What's the intent? What are concerns? Yeah, how's this feeling like as this starts going out?
Definitely nervous for me. But more importantly, I'm feeling, yeah, to be simple and innocent about it also. That the sincerity of an effort over the last decade or so that I've been engaged in constructive social change work, yeah, there is things that I could understand, and there are things that I am understanding, and there are many things that I'm not. So I'm still seeing this as one more step in that journey, as not the step, but one more step. So I'm also trying to approach it from that simplicity. That, yeah, it's one more step.
I also echo with the nervousness, tentativeness, and jittery feelings almost because I still feel like there's so much we could do, there's so much we could write, there's so much we could elaborate, dialogue, fine tune, refine, etc. So it almost feels like 6 months, but also not enough. because the kind of things we're trying to articulate are things which need much more conversation and dialogue. At the same time, they also could go totally out of context if read in a separate context. So I feel a lot of tentativeness around how will it be received, what is the context in which it will be read, etc. And of course, the need for perfection. It can be better, it can be more beautiful, more colorful, more this, more that. So I think both of those are present. I think the third side that is present for me is also an act of courage. At the same time, all that we've put together is also who we are and where we've come from. It also seems like uh, a kind of acknowledgement of and courage to say, yes, this is where we come from. And while half of it may still be baking, half of it is already baked also.
Yeah, to build on from where Shashank and Kejal left, this is not the end stage of this is where we are. We have attempted to also take a broad canvas on what could be the direction, what could be the contours of the path ahead. But a lot of that will evolve with further discussions, with further conversations, dialogues, with a whole lot of people. So this is again a step in the journey, but that journey is still a long way ahead as well.
So are you feeling defensive, Rohit? Is it fair to say that we're already preempting something?
It's I don't know. I mean, I would say that it's not a complete. It's not fully all singing, all dancing thing for everyone. It is a work in progress, is how I would put it.
Great. When I check in with myself, I am definitely feeling vulnerable about it because out there, I wish it would be a intellectual rang bhumi, jahan different ideas come like different colors and they all mix and all. I also know it's an intellectual run bhumi, right, where ideas see ideas are competing for attention and ideas feel threatened by other ideas whether we like it or not. So as much as we're going with our simplicity and innocence, this act is also a political act of putting something out there and putting something out, uh, questioning the ideological spectrum itself in some ways and saying, hey, let's look at the richness and nuances of what is there. So I definitely feel vulnerable but prepared. I feel very prepared with all of us together to be able to engage. And I deeply, deeply trust our spirit, which we're hearing, where we're saying, hey, welcome, let's engage. And it's a long journey. So these are our initial steps into the world in that way, initial collective steps. So that great. Let's get to the next question. What is the one highlight or insight for you that this report is bringing forth? Like, if somebody would have to pick any one thing for you, which is like, this is the heart of, or this one thing is worth thinking about from the report, one insight worth thinking about, what would that be for you?
So for me, one key insight uh, is that there are, I mean, all of us acknowledge that in the world there are several crises that are converging: the climate crisis, the economic inequity, or the political polarization that we are seeing, or the psychological disconnection we are seeing. So one way to see them is like so many of these things are happening together, and it's causing discomfort and a lot of challenge and collapse around the world, in India included. Uh, but a key insight for me that this report is trying to touch upon is that underneath all these crises, there is a evolutionary, there is a spiritual crisis that has very very deep layers, where all of humanity is perhaps at a certain threshold, and that these all other crises that are visible in the external world are manifestations or symptoms of that stage where we are. So, what is that stage? How we are there? We are all slowly trying to discover, and this report again is an attempt to throw some light on that. So, that I feel is an important insight.
Yeah, just building on from where Shashank left, the situation that we are in today, the crisis or pralay, as we might call it, is not something that has been witnessed for the first time. civilizations over civilizations have witnessed this, have engaged, have dealt with this since time immemorial. And I mean, yet we still are here. You know, things haven't finished on this planet. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be hopeful for, a lot to be grateful for. And during these moments of crisis, one of the things which have been mentioned, again, take scripture after scripture, is you hold on to what you can, and then that will lay on the foundations for what comes after us. So yeah, it's not a once, just the first time and the last time that something like this will be witnessed. Not all doom and gloom. There's a lot to be thankful, grateful, hopeful for.
Yeah, similar feelings for me also, the recognition of our past, of the wisdom of the land that we are in, and how the cyclicalness of what we are kind of engaging with was something that really stood out for me. This whole process, because every time we feel, oh, we are going through this is the first time in humanity, this is what is happening, and then we go back and we rewind and say, oh, this has happened so many times. But each generation felt that this was what was happening was worst for them. But I think with every cycle, the same feeling comes up for every generation. So the recognition of the cycle and the recognition of that we're from a land and a place which has this historical roots and the spiritual context in which all of this kept evolving and has told us that this will happen. So how do we kind of hold on to these wisdom and work with them?
Yep, I think, yeah, for me, there are several insights. I think what I love about a study is the whole energy centers and the idea that there are certain concentration points where if we impact, the impact ripples. That's not to discount that there's already so much energy around those energy centers and so much being attempted to influence. And yet, I think looking at the Indic body and saying, hey, this is where the energy is very interesting. And at the same time, just building on what you all said, right? I think we are also telling the global north slash west slash modernity, which includes us kind of civilization, that hey, this is cyclical, this is not exceptional, this is not the first time, we're not special as much as we'd like to believe. This has happened, and let's dig roots deeply. So I think in some ways we're taking a counter position to some of the popular narrative around the meta crisis. And I think that's it's going to be interesting if it even gets registered or get engaged with. I think that's what I'm particularly curious about as well. So yeah, I think the insight that there is a potential if we can work together to impact something beyond us. A small group, if aligned well, can factors. Also, I think it's a very honest report. We're putting out what we are going to do very honestly and straight up, right? It's like putting out our theory of change and our strategic plans out there and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. So I think there's the public acknowledgement of what we're proposing to do is uh, also the highlight. Any other insights anybody else wants to share?
Yeah, I also wanted to bring out, what other thing I found very interesting in how we did this report was also as important. The whole intent of looking at it as not as data or numbers that we want to present to the world, but our own sense making journey of what are we listening, what are we learning, and how are we putting together these pieces. The approach in itself, where each of us picked up parts which really resonated and called out for us, and then inquiring deep into it rather than saying that, let's find out numbers and research and only put that, acknowledging the different ways of learning and sense making and putting that out. I think that in itself is a very different approach. And how do we kind of look at that approach also being as important, not more important, but as important than the other ways of sense making in talking about where we are right now as humanity.
Great. So that brings us to the semi-final question, and this one is about the pathway for the report going forward. What is really the pathway for this work as a whole? And how do you see it shaping up into the future? How do you see it impacting what you're doing as well? So, what's the direction from here on?
I mean, just dovetailing on the thread that has been alive, that if this is not the first time humanity or the planet is facing such an existential threat, if this is not the first time where things have crumbled and have degenerated, so then it is nice to lean into the wisdom that is present to really go beyond the popular vortexes of wisdom that we often consider to lean into. So really go into some of those, experiments or people or places in the country or outside where people have taken a longer term view, a cyclical view. uh, Also start to again understand the language of symbols or the language of myths that tells us over a long period of time some of the archetypical dynamics that any society or individuals go through. So building that capacity and opening ourselves to that understanding, because the report is like a consolidation for me, and with a lot of questions, with a lot of frames to look at things, lenses to look at things. The act of looking, the act of understanding still remains. And really, like, if we were in a very very hyper rationalist stage as humanity, it is time to balance it with intuitive understanding, uh, or with again grounding in emotional sort of experience. So how do you come out of that? So for me it is living practice to continue to do that. Or for example, a chapter, a sub chapter within the chapter that on integral leadership, which is about that how do we create a balance of masculine and feminine energies in leadership, where leadership is not just seen as brute force or strength or ability to protect, but it is also seen as nurturance, holding space, creating, uh, yeah, creating a nurturing environment for people. So, and many, many other things. So, how do we kind of uh, practice that and see those examples and those stories? Is I guess some of a little more vague I was, I guess, but I think some of those are pathways that are emerging for me, or some of the pathways for us.
I think for me, the report is definitely a starting point for a much longer journey of thinking, doing, feeling, because I see it as the seed of a longer term kind of work plan, because we're putting out how we are weaving ecosystem weavers and how do we see our convergence around the chakras, the energy points, and so on. So it's not only it's at one level it's a blueprint, but not only that, right? It's also the seed for a deepening of a thought process and inviting multiple people into dialogue around this particular worldview, around this ideology. So I definitely see the thought stream part of it expanding, and more thinking starting to happen and more branches around the themes it's putting out. And at the same time, I also see it getting action on the ground, so that there is a action reflection process and we keep updating our maps. This is just a very version zero of how we are seeing things, but just the updating of it from on ground action, uh, and making it a living document, not just a static report. I think that to me seems to be the high possibility.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are already living a whole lot of things that we have mentioned in the report, who are doing a whole lot of things mentioned in the report. We need to go out, speak to them, dialogue with them, see how we can be in service of that vision, of that work, deepen it ourselves, live those even more ourselves too. And yeah, and from there on, refine, assimilate, um, uh, within that orientation, within that direction, and hopefully grow the ecosystem, uh, discuss with diverging viewpoints, as you were mentioning earlier, Abhishek, and yeah, see where that takes us.
I feel the whole process was a same paging process for all of us also as an ecosystem with individuals, organizations who all have different kind of things who we are doing and being. The whole process of putting together the study was in itself a same paging process for us. And now that we've same paged around these ideas and these ways of looking at the world, I think it's also a point now for us to deepen our own internal process. Like how do we want to take actions from here? How do we want to convene more and bring more people who align with these ways of looking at it? So the conversation also ripples into many more people who would align in these directions to talk from here to say, hey, I also think the same thing, but I do the same thing in a very different way. So can these be more aligned? Can we weave them better? Can we plug them better? Because I think one thing which all of us acknowledge is no one of us knows better, and like not just one of us or few of us can do everything, right? So all of us need to bring together and weave better. And I hope that this process helps us to weave better, helps us to understand each other better, and also integrate smaller dimensions of these back into what we existingly do. How do we take these small steps back into the action that we do every day in our life, in our organizations, and weave them? I feel for me, this report is a reminder to weave better.
Lots of possibilities. And let's see how it evolves. Nature has its own plans. So here's my last question, and it's a meta question because meta crisis. So meta question. The meta question is what are questions you're holding as this report kind of wherever it reached. I'm sure there are more questions also that it brought forth for you. So was just curious about what questions are you left with after working on this report? Was it only knowledge that came in, or did a few new questions also were they born? Right? And I can start with one. We can have several such questions maybe, but one of the questions that I was left with was around how an ecosystem actually works, right? And for me, the process of this report revealed to me that there is a speed of mind and that there is a speed of life, and just the nature of how can ecosystems engage, align, given that there are different rhythms and there are different speeds. And so I'm left with a lot of curiosity about how can ecosystems be as effective or even more effective than organizations in presence of all the ambiguity, the chaos, the differing rhythms. So yeah, how do we mimic nature better? I guess I wonder. So yeah, that's definitely one question that's alive for me.
For me, I mean, I am beginning to appreciate the joy and the significance and the effectiveness of the oral traditions. And for a long time, I was holding this view that there's been so much wisdom which has not been documented. But now I realize that an oral tradition where the speaker, the teller, and the listener sort of are present in one moment, and the knowledge or the ideas emerge from there. And both of them, by their relationship, tend to let emergence happen in those ideas. So that avoids the staticness, the non-aliveness of knowledge, and really also grounds it in a context, in a moment, in space and time. So I'm like, okay, what are the vehicles today for communicating that dynamism of knowledge where the listener and the teller are engaged in a relationship? So, how do we, as authors or as people creating this report, relate to the readers? And what are those methods? What are those vehicles?
Yeah, for me, the attempt has been to balance the outer work with a whole lot of inner work as well. Um, and the understanding goes deeper every passing day, that there's much more work needed to be done within, uh, for that to reflect outside. So, yeah, how can one not lose sight of the inner work which needs to be done?
I feel for me, the question that's left is after this whole meta crisis report study, it feels so meta that given that this is so meta, how do you make it mini so that it's digestible for people? People don't feel so overwhelmed that they're like, we don't want to talk about this meta stuff, like keep it to yourself. Be better, do something else. So, how do we take these meta things into more daily lives? How do we integrate them? How do we articulate them? How do we experience them without really feeling the meta-ness of it? Because meta ness also kind of evokes inaction, and it also makes it feel inaccessible, whereas the truth is that it's very, very felt. So how do we do that?
Uh, for me, a related question would be how does this look like on the ground? How do we prototype and experiment these ideas in very real ways? And how do we start dialoguing with opposing views or differing views, right? How do we not make this a product but a process and a process of ongoing dialogue, uh, where some delicious insights can emerge from the interaction of opposites, right? And how do we do that with integrity? That definitely is one more. All right, that looks like a bunch of questions to go with into the world. So thank you so much for joining into this podcast. And yeah, let's hope that this finds a life of its own, a rhythm of its own, and becomes what it's meant to be. Thank you.